Welcome to Blooming Wildwood Homestead. Today we're going to discuss how to get started with food preservation when you're on a budget. When you're first getting started, you may want to get into preserving your own food, but maybe you don't have all of the equipment yet. I know that was something that I was challenged with when I first got out on my own and wanted to start doing some of the food preservation. You just don't have everything that maybe your parents have, or if your parents haven't taught you how to do food preservation, you might not have all the things that you see on videos or that you've read about in books. And so how can we get started if you don't have everything that you need and you're working off of a budget? So here are 5 ideas that I have to get started if you don't have unlimited resources. And I'm sure that you probably have some other ideas. Feel free to leave those in the comments below, and let's just start a dialogue about some different ways to try and get started with food preservation while working within the constraints of a budget. The first thing would be to decide what method of food preservation is going to be your top priority. There are different ways to go about preserving food, and just because you're wanting to maybe do all of them at some point, it doesn't mean that you have to start with every single type of food preservation in the beginning. So decide what it is that you want to do and where you want to start. And that might depend on what resources are available, but it also might depend on what produce you have available that you are wanting to go ahead and preserve. And so try to keep that in mind as you're trying to figure out what kind of equipment you even need. Freezing your items probably has the lowest barrier to entry as far as cost involvement. You really only have to get freezer bags, and depending on what type of produce you are going to be freezing, you might also want some type of a pot for blanching. A pasta pot works really well. If you have a pasta cooker, you could use that kind of multi-purpose. I love having the pasta cooker because I can use it for blanching items. I can use it for the bottom piece for some of my brines and things like that. So it tends to be very versatile in the kitchen. And of course you can go ahead and use it for cooking pasta as well. So the fewer items you need, the easier it is for both cooking and for food preservation. The next, probably least expensive method would be doing fermentation. If you're trying to ferment items, you really just need your jars and then some type of pickling pipe and weights, and you can get those in a kit, but they aren't super expensive. Depending on how much you're going to be doing, I suppose that would depend on the cost there, but that might be another way to kind of get started with some things that's not quite as expensive. Next step would be dehydrating, and if you want to dehydrate items, you need to have some type of dehydrator and your freezer bags or jars to put them in. After the items are dehydrated, you need some way to store them so that they're not being exposed to the air all the time. Sometimes, depending on what it is, I'll pop the item, even though it's dehydrated, into the freezer just to make sure that everything's good to go, especially with my sun-dried tomatoes, since I don't pack them in an oil or something like the ones that you buy from the store. I like to just keep those in the freezer just in case they didn't completely dry all the way. Then I don't have to worry about mold or things like that. So that's always a possibility as well. And then probably one of the most popular methods of food preservation would be canning items. And of course you can do hot water bath or pressure canner, and just know that you don't have to start with everything if you are going to get into canning. So you might just want to start with hot water bath, get yourself some jars, lids, and some of the other equipment. I'll link to a video down in the description where I talk a little bit more about items that you would need for canning, but there are a few more than you would need for some of the other food preservation techniques. And so it is a little bit more expensive, and sometimes that tends to prohibit people from getting started. And I don't want that to be a barrier for you to get started with food preservation if you are running off of a limited number of funds. The next tip probably seems pretty obvious, but it would be to actually have a budget and input a line item for your food preservation. It is going to cost money to get started with these things, and if you're working from a budget, you probably don't have the funds to buy everything at once. And so by putting a line item in there that you can go ahead and have throughout the year, that's going to give you opportunity to invest in equipment, supplies. You'll need new canning lids. Even if you've been canning for a while, you might have equipment that needs upgrade over time. So including a line item in your budget is going to be a great way to make sure that you have the funds available to purchase the items that you need for food preservation. The next tip would be to visit estate or garage sales. This time of year, we see a lot of people getting rid of things either because they're moving or because a loved one is now leaving that home and they're not able to take all of their items with them. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't see the value in food preservation anymore. And so this can be a perfect opportunity for you to scoop up some of those deals and find some of the equipment that you need. If you are going to purchase some items from sales like that, you just want to be a little bit particular about what it is that you are getting. You can often find lots of canning jars. Just make sure that they don't have cracks or chips out of the rim. You want to make sure that they're in good shape, but that could be a great way to start finding your canning jars. If people are selling like a dehydrator or a canner or any of those higher priced items, just make sure that you don't see any rust, or if it's something electrical, make sure that the cords look good, and just try to be aware of some of those things. If you end up picking up a pressure canner from a sale like that, I would recommend taking it to your extension office, or sometimes different stores will have somebody to come in to just check the pressure gauge and make sure that everything is functioning properly so that you can be assured of proper food preservation techniques. Next up would be to shop the end of season sales. So right now we're kind of in the midst of things, and you're probably not going to find a lot of things on sale at the store itself. You might find something. I know Amazon Prime sometimes has their summer deals, so maybe they might have some things that are on sale during that time, and that might be a great opportunity for you to look at something during the season. But a lot of times your biggest sales as far as locally are going to be your end of season sales, and that can work out perfectly if you've now set aside a line item in your budget for food preservation. Then you're able to save up a bit and purchase from that end of season sale. And so that can be a great way to start acquiring some of the equipment that you need. Next up would be to borrow from a friend or see if you can join them for a food preservation day. If you're really not sure if this is the method for you, or if this is something that you want to invest in, you think it is, but you're not 100% sure, see if you have a friend that you could do some canning with, or somebody that you could work with, and maybe you can kind of exchange some time and labor for the use of some equipment, or you can do things together. It's a great way to learn new things, as well as be able to have access to the equipment that you need. Plus, it's always more fun to do things together. And so if you can share some of that labor and still both it could be mutually beneficial to both parties involved, that could be a great way to get started as well. I hope these tips were helpful for you today. If you would like to see a part 2 where we talk about some different ways to save on the actual food that you're going to be preserving, let me know in the comments below and we can definitely put together a part 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe so this video can get shared with more people who need to know about these things, and I think that you will enjoy this video right over here. Until next time, bye everyone.